What's up, nerds? Today we're here to talk about a character that we all know and love in a story that's brand new, sort of, and that is Hellboy in Bones of the Giants. Alright, so part of the reason why I say this is a new story, sort of, is from what I'm given to understand, this is a story that actually started out as a straight up novel, and then they decided to do an actual comic book adaptation of the novel, which is always kind of interesting. When you have a character who started out as a comic book, and then they write an actual novel, and they decide, hey, let's go ahead and do a comic book adaptation of the novel of a comic book character. Always very interesting stuff, but that's what we have here, and it's actually like a pretty good story, I'm not gonna lie. If you watched my last video, it was also having to do with Nordic themes, so definitely go back and watch that. But I mean, yeah, just from this particular story, I was like, all right, you know what, I always love like reading about like Nordic stuff, Norse myths and all of that. I'm a fan of black metal, so I mean, I've always been very much into all of that type of region of shit and like legends and bullshit, so I was absolutely willing to check this out, especially because, like I said, it involves Hellboy, who has been one of my favorite characters for a while now. Anyway, so we start out on this, and we see like where there's this ice fisherman out on the lake as we see lightning starting to strike and everything, and it says, like the death cry of an antique god, thunder tore the night sky, and the Northland trembled. So we see we're in February 18th of 1988. So a little bit back, you know, some time back now. So he comes across this dead Thor and, of course, Mjolnir, who is also lying there. And so he kind of sees like the body hisses or whatever. And then, of course, you know, he calls in other people. So we see there are some researchers already there kind of checking it out when Hellboy and his crew roll up. And so they're kind of like looking at them, they're like, what the hell? Because obviously it's kind of hard to miss Hellboy when he's walking up on you. So they're just like, what the hell? Are you the American scientist? And he just says, not exactly, but we're the closest you're going to get. So they come up and kind of like start asking like, okay, what's going on? What's the situation with all of this? And then Hellboy's like, is this really what it looks like? Because he can already kind of tell like this is something very obviously magical and shit. So they start telling him like, do you know what that would mean? We'd have to re-examine tales of gods and monsters from every culture in history. So he's just saying, like, I've seen a lot of weird stuff. That's just my life. And then Abe, who's also there, his brother, Abe Sapien, is also saying, like, has anyone tried to lift it, the hammer? And then they're saying, like, the lightning has thus far prevented us from attempting to move the remains, but as to the hammer, yes, we tried to move the hammer. You couldn't lift it, he says. And they're like, well, we attempted to lever it out of position, but it might as well be welded to the ground. Of course, no one has tried to lift it by hand because of the lightning. So that's where we see like Hellboy is already picking it up. He's like, wait, what was that about lightning? And they're like, no, you need to put that back where it was and everything. And right when they're like in the middle of saying that, all of a sudden he gets struck by lightning, of course. And then he has this vision of Thor, who was fighting against Jormungandr, the giant like world snake and everything, which was part of Ragnarok. He fights against Jormungandr. He ends up killing the beast, and he's also killed by it. So that's actually what happens here, where we see like a very brief fight scene where he hits it over the head, and then it manages to like throw him down and everything. And then when he like lies there dying, we can see he's literally right in front of the mouth of the serpent. And then his Mjolnir is also just kind of like laying there as he's dying. So that's where we come back over to Hellboy after he saw all of that. And he's just kind of like disoriented. And then all of a sudden he goes into a little bit of a berserker rage where he starts attacking some of the scientists and shit. And it takes Abe coming up and telling him like, yo, what's the matter with you? We thought you were drowning. You ran into the river. And so he speaks in what I'm assuming is supposed to be like a Nordic tongue, because of the like difference in the caption where he's saying like, touch me again and I'll feed your innards to my goats. And then they're just like, goats? Fascinating. So he says, Hellboy, it's Abe, look at me. So all of a sudden like that managed to like make him like snap out of it. He's like, Abe? Like he's like, what the hell was going on? Like what happened to me? So he's saying like, geez, I'm sorry. And then Abe says, I can't believe you weren't hurt worse, but I think that lightning strike scrambled your eggs. And then one of the scientists says, the lightning, perhaps you want to put the hammer down before you're struck again. And Hellboy looks at it and he's like, okay, yeah, this is Mjolnir. He's like, yeah, I probably should like put it down and everything. And he goes to try and do it, but Abe tries to tell him like, it's okay, just put the damn thing down. And he says, well, I'm having some trouble because it appears like it's stuck to me and shit. So he's not able to let it go from his fist and shit. And he says, this thing is fused to my hand. So that's where we see where they get into a car and they're like driving over to like an observation center or something, where one of the like the native scientists, I guess, is taking them to where he says he's taking them to. The artifact is the property of the Swedish government. Until we can find a way to separate it from Hellboy's fist, he's going to be our guest. So he ought to, like, Hellboy just says north. So when Abe is like, are you okay? He says, we need to turn around, head north. There's something up there that's not right. I can feel it. And so the guy is trying to tell him, like, we're driving to Skellisval so you can be examined. You can contact your superiors from there. This decision is not in your hands or in mine. But all of a sudden he does, like, the whole, like, Nordic thing again, where he says, like, turn the car around north right now. We go north. Yeah, turn this car around, little man. We go north. So he's just like, okay, like you said, we're going to go ahead and go north. So they drive up there and they get to wherever it is that he's been directed to. They get out of the car and he's saying like, they're asking him like, at least tell us what we can expect to find here. And he says, but all of this feels familiar. Well, he says, I don't know, but all of this feels familiar. And then Abe says like, familiar to you or familiar to the original owner of the hammer. So he just says, I have these images in my head, fighting monsters, that kind of thing. So he's like, well, Abe tells him, you fought a lot of monsters. And he says, plenty, but these aren't my memories. So he's like, all right, well then lead on, God of Thunder. So he's like, that's not funny. So they continue to like travel on, and then one of the scientists is saying to the other one, like, do you feel something? And Abe says, evil. You don't need a dead god's warhammer to get the vibe off this place. So he's just saying, like, Hellboy says, I'm just guessing, but I think someone beat us to it. So they come across this like cave and everything where they can see there's obviously like man-made tools and shit. Like there's this, I don't even know what the hell is that, like a forklift or something. Anyway, so they're saying, like, the cave looks natural enough, but someone's used explosives to clear it. And he's saying, the feeling I followed up here, that evil, I can still feel it. But the thing that caused it is gone. So they're saying, like, whatever was here, I think we can all agree it was very well hidden. Someone did not want to be found. So they open the door and go into this cave, and he's like, makes me wonder how it was found. So Abe just tells him, I guess I don't know. I don't have to ask if you think this has something to do with the remains found at the river, but do you have any idea how that body got there, or what was in this cave that's so important? But he says, like, something started here. I don't know what it is yet, but I know we're going to want to stop it. Sorry to break up the party, Clark, but me and Abe need to go. We're heading to Stockholm. Got to see a guy I used to know. So they're asking, like, is it an old friend of yours? He's like, yeah, not really. So we can see where they're pursuing this, like, girl through the crowd and everything back to where her home is. And they finally catch up to her, like, try and knock on the door after she slams it in, like, their face and everything. And then, like, they knock. She says, go away, demon, go away. I'm not going to let you kill my father. And then Abe is like, what exactly did you do to these people? So he's like, nice, Abe. Thanks for the vote of confidence. So Abe tries telling her, like, Miss Aikman, my name is Abe. I'm with the Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense. My friend and I were hoping to speak to Professor Edmund Aikman on it. And then, like, she immediately cuts him off. She's like, I know Hellboy is out there. I'm not going to let him in here so that way he can kill my father. So Hellboy starts saying, like, hey, I don't like the old guy, but we're not here to hurt him. I need his help. Tell him we found Mjolnir. He'll know what I'm in. And then all of a sudden she opens the door. She's like, all right, this better not be a trick. So she lets them in and shit. And then we can see where they're talking to her father. And he's basically saying, like, I know you don't really have much reason to trust me after what happened the last time between you and I. And Hellboy's saying, like, you did almost get me killed, Professor, but I'm over it. From what I remember, you got the worst of it. So that's where the professor goes on to say, gentlemen, this is my daughter. She's a scholar in her own right and everything. Now, with the niceties out of the way, let's move on to the reason you've come. I want a closer look at that hammer. So he goes on to, like, examine it and everything while it's still in Hellboy's fist. And he's saying, like, wow, this is very impressive. I'm going to want to try and get, if we can, I want to try and get samples of the actual, like, material. I want to try and get etchings of the damn, like, the carvings on the side and everything. And Hellboy tries to tell him, like, that he knows that what's on the side of it is Yggdrasil, the world tree. He says, I can feel it. And then the professor asks him, like, feel it? What do you mean? So he says, I've been having daydreams, feelings. We followed them north, found a cave where someone had hidden something evil. pretty sure it's all connected, but we don't know how. So Abe starts saying, like, we were hoping you might be able to help with that. And then the daughter says, we'll do whatever we can. For tonight, though, I'm afraid I must insist my father get some rest. However thrilling this discovery, he's not a young man anymore. So he's like, well, I'd argue with her, but she does have a point. Anyway, he says, meanwhile, if you do not have other accommodations, please spend the night here. And of course, Abe at first is like, well, we don't really want to be a burden. But they say, don't worry, it's like a big house. We have plenty of beds. We can definitely accommodate y'all and everything. So they leave, and then, of course, Hellboy has to, like, mock Abe and everything for a second. And then we see we're in the middle of the night. All of a sudden, Hellboy is woken up by this giant squirrel who comes into his window and says, he's fleeing, Hellboy, you must stop him. So he's like, what the hell? But all of a sudden it says, the fate of Midgard depends upon you. So he's like, say that again? And he says, hurry, Aikman is running away. So that's when Hellboy looks out the window and he can see where the professor is, like, running away and shit. So he's like, well, damn. So he gets out of bed and he goes over to Abe, who's like sleeping in a tub, and he tells him to wake up. He's like, the squirrel said we have to like hurry up, wants us to catch the old man. And he's like, squirrel? So they get up and start running out, but before he can actually get outside, he's all of a sudden attacked by all of these, I don't even know what they are, zombies, ghosts, or something. But yeah, he's all of a sudden like swarmed and shit, and that's actually where this issue leaves off for now. So we'll see what happens in the next one. Like I said, this particular story was actually originally like a novel and everything, and then they decided, okay, let's go ahead and make it into a comic book. So I appreciate that, because unfortunately these days I don't really have as much time to sit down and read novels. You know what I mean? Just straightforward like text books. Well, I don't really want to call them textbooks, but that's basically what they are. You know, where it's just words, no pictures. I don't really have as much time to sit down and read them, because I'm constantly doing shit, so I don't really have the time to devote to sitting down and reading chapter books and shit. So it's kind of nice that they decided to do this with the visuals and everything, because a lot of what's like relayed in an actual novel actually gets translated into a lot of the art, and then you're mostly just left with the dialogue. So kind of makes it easier for me when I don't have to read all of that, because it would take so much longer to actually get through the story itself. Because I'm not someone who just speeds through my stories. I could do that. There are other people I know who are like speed readers, and they just go page, 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 page. I'm not like that. I actually try to like absorb everything that I'm seeing. When they're describing a scene, I actually try and visualize that to the best of my ability, which does considerably slow me down. But I mean, at the end of the story, I actually understand it a lot better than other people who just speed read through the stuff, you know? So that's what I'm saying. I actually appreciate it that they went ahead and did this, because it makes it easier for someone like myself who needs to be able to like get the story down, understand it, know what's going on, digest it, and then make a review video for you guys. So in the end, it serves all of us. It's a service to all of us to do something like this. So I'm glad that they did, especially because, I mean, this seems to be like the only way that we get Hellboy content nowadays. They mostly just do it in like little limited series and little like, you know, 1 or 2 shots and shit like that. So I'm not that mad at it. I'm okay with it. This particular series is going to be 4 issues, apparently. It's a 4-issue mini-series, so I'm totally cool with that. We'll see how the story itself plays out. I do like the themes that they have going here. I mean, it's Hellboy, so as long as you get the right kind of, like, mix of humor, I mean, just a little bit of humor along with, like, the supernatural and all of that, like, it works for me. All of it works for me very well. So can't wait to see where this is going to go. But yeah, I don't know if anybody out there has had a chance to read it. If you have, then definitely share your thoughts with me down below in the comments. And even if you haven't, wow, words are hard today, but even if you haven't read the story, do feel free to let me know what you thought about it. Is it something you'll be picking up? If so, definitely let me know that down in the comments below. If you liked the video, then definitely make sure to like the video. Make sure you are subscribed. Turn on the notification bell so that way you know whenever I'm putting up new content, because you know you want to be kept up with that. But if you're done here, then go and read a book, particularly this one. And if not, then I'll see you on my next video.